Okay, here we go. What's up, everybody? My name is Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knox Talks. First of all, I would like to say that this episode is brought to you in part by the Prairie Node of the Canadian Research Initiative in Substance Misuse and Prairie Sky Recovery Center here in Saskatchewan. So, let's see here. Kind of lost myself there for a minute. When I was going into the countdown, I went live streaming, and suddenly YouTube pops up and says, your bitrate is too low and you should fix it. And I don't know how to do that. So if it doesn't look good right now, I apologize, but I am recording it. So if it doesn't come out nice, I will upload a nicer copy. So anyways, today's guest, Jose Restolo. Oh, I hope I said that right. We practiced, so I think it's good. From Lisbon, Portugal, has his PhD in toxicology and is also a member of the European Workplace Drug Testing Society. We are going to talk about, what are we going to do? We are going to talk with him about decriminalization, how decriminalization is working for Portugal right after this. Oh, what did I do? I'm all flustered. Here we go. Oh man, you don't know what it is like until your streaming platform goes sideways when you're already live.
I spent 23 years living in addiction. 16 of those years I worked as a Red Seal tradesperson in Saskatchewan and Northern Alberta. During that time, I made many mistakes and took more than a few hard knocks. I went from tradesman to business owner to hiding from gang members and dumpster diving. But with that lived experience, I've decided to try and make a change. I've dedicated my life to raising awareness and promoting change in the fields of substance use and psychological health and safety. So join me and my guests as we take off the blinders around mental health in our communities and at work and shine a light on what's working and what's not working in the fields of mental health and occupational health and safety. I'm Daniel Unmanageable, and I'll be your host, and this is Hard Knox Talks.
Okay, I think I've regained my composure. I almost want to read that intro again, poor guy. Okay, where's Jose? Here he is. Hello, Jose.
Hello, Dan. How are you?
Well, I'm doing okay now. But when we were in that countdown, I was like trying to YouTube and figure out different things, but sometimes you got to just roll with it, man. So.
Yeah, that's right.
So you are native to Portugal, correct?
Correct. Born and raised in Portugal.
Okay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up and then having decriminalization come into play during your lifetime?
Well, again, I was born in the 80s, during the 80s, and it coincides with the starting of rise of heroin addiction across Portugal. So I grew up with this ghost of heavy drugs. This invisible ghost was something that could attack anyone from every social level. Doesn't matter if you were poor or rich. Nobody, and I mean nobody, was free of getting hit by this disease, this plague, if you want to call it. So also during this period, Portugal had the highest numbers of infectious diseases like AIDS, HIV, or hepatitis C across Europe. So it was even common to find some places across the country where you could find a kind of open-air supermarket of drugs, mostly for heroin, for both to buy it and to use it on the street. So in the year 2000, things changed dramatically, and this was not an easy decision, or at least was not that well received by the general public. I can see from families and friends at the time. It was kind of controversial to tell the people, look, using drugs is bad. It's bad for your health. Everyone knows about it. But hey, we are going to decriminalize it because we think it's the best option to attack this problem. So you can imagine it was not easy for the general population to accept it.
Yeah, no kidding. So why did you get into, was this why you got into toxicology, or how did that come to be?
No, it wasn't. So since I was a little child, I grew up with this child dream of becoming a scientist and to do experiments. When I finished my high school, I decided to go into chemistry because I was in love, and I still am, with chemistry. So I decided to do graduation in chemistry. I worked in research, different fields of chemistry, from organic synthesis to physical chemistry. So things completely different from each other. And then I made, I would not say U-turn, but a quite drastic turn in my professional life by doing a master in forensic medicine and forensic sciences. And the passion for toxicology, especially forensic toxicology, started to grow. And well, the last thing I know, I was working in the field.
just like that, hey?
Yes, just like that.
So, and you're also a member of the European Workplace Drug Testing Society. I'm not sure, I think we have an organization like that in Canada, and I got to say, maybe I'm a little embarrassed that I don't know that for sure, because I probably should. But how did you find your way into that?
So across my professional life, I started to interact with professionals of the field of screening of drug and alcohol in the workplace. So then it was just the logical step. I started to attend the annual meetings, the biannual meetings of EWDTS, the European Workplace Drug Testing Society, and I ended up to apply to the board of the society, where we are a group of professionals, different fields, and we try our best to raise awareness about the impact and the benefits of doing workplace drug and alcohol testing, but also to raise awareness on best practices across Europe, judging by what we judge to be the best examples across the world.
Mm-hmm. So when decriminalization came in, how was it brought in? Was it an overnight thing, or was there a lot of lead up to it?
Again, there was a lot of lead up, and the grand architect of this solution was Dr. João Golão. Is still in the field, and he was the mastermind behind. And after a lot of discussion with authorities, with the government, with the different ministries, it was approved by the Portuguese Parliament, and the law was published on the 29th of November of 2000. And then they started to work. And the numbers show that it really worked.
Like right off the hop?
Sorry?
Right off the hop?
Yeah.
The numbers start, sorry, maybe you don't know that. Maybe that's a Canadian saying. So right away, basically, like how long was it before you started seeing differences in statistics and things like that?
Well, the first 2 years were crucial to start seeing something. And then year after year, you see the numbers starting to decrease, the number of heroin users, you start seeing cleaner streets, you see a drastic decrease on drug-related deaths.
Maybe this is a good time to look at some of those statistics that you brought with you.
Yes, let me just share my screen.
Okay.
I can share a little bit of the numbers. It's always better when you show the numbers. Okay, so this is just to put it in context, as many of you might not be aware. During the 70s, there was a democratic revolution in Portugal that got the country rid of 40 years dictatorship. So the society started to open up, and with these, drugs were brought in as well. And during the 90s, it reached its peak, especially the heroin abuse Again, just for who is listening to us have an idea, roughly 1% of the Portuguese population was hooked into heroin, which is a lot. and again, we had the worst numbers across the European Union in terms of drug-related HIV infections. So this is just a print screen of the law that was published in the year 2000. And most importantly, the results are shown here. This is official data from the Portuguese authorities, and you can see a decrease of roughly 90% of all drug-induced deaths. And so as the number of adults using drugs also decreasing considerably across the years.
That's substantial. Holy cow.
It is.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's important to highlight that this was something that worked for Portugal, for the Portuguese society. It's not a super formula that will work all over the world.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, and
so
we talk
with
about
our demographic, with our culture.
Yeah, well, we talk about a spectrum of care and how we see the bigger organizations, the authorities, the ministries. They tend to have boxes to check, and if you don't fit into a box, they don't know what to do with you, right? So what else you got?
And again, we became an example. We have been quoted several times across the world. For example, you have here an opinion article from the New York Times. There are also some books where Portugal is mentioned as an example to follow about this. And here, I think the key message from the Portuguese example was the fact that until the year 2000, the drug user, was seen as a criminal, someone that committed a crime, and therefore needed to be judged and imprisoned. That was it. With this law, we changed that paradox. So the user is no longer seen as a criminal, but rather as a patient, someone with a disease that needs to be overlooked, that needs to be taken care, that needs to be rehabilitated and reinserted into the society. So I think this is definitely the key message to bring.
Okay, cool. I couldn't agree more. So what does the process look like when someone gets caught with illicit substances?
Well, it always depends on the amount of illicit substances the person was caught with. Until a certain threshold is considered to be for personal use alone. And again, that's not a crime. Obviously, the police officer will retrieve the drugs and dispose them properly, but it will not get fined or imprisoned for that. If it is above that threshold, then it will be considered for dealing or trafficking, and that is a criminal felony. So that gives jail time between 4 to 12 years. Again, if those drugs are used to finance your own addiction, then the penalty is lighter.
Okay. And so say somebody is getting caught with personal amounts time and time again. Is it possible for them to be forced into treatment?
They try to. Again, prevention is the most important weapon we have against. And when prevention is no longer possible, we try to rehabilitate the person by putting the person on a free of charge methadone program, speaking about heroin specifically.
So is there things in place for other substances?
There are, and it is starting to become more relevant for cannabis, the so-called non-harmful drug, or at least how the people foresee the drug as something that it's okay to use. It's non-addictive. I know that Canada is many times mentioned here in Portugal as an example because you legalize the recreational use of cannabis of the country, as well as some states of the US or Uruguay. But again, the number of psychotic breaks associated to cannabis consumption have been rising in the last years. In the latest report, the report of this year, the numbers show that they continue to increase in terms of number of users, in terms of nervous outbreaks, mental outbreaks associated with the consumption. So the authorities are also implementing programs to rehabilitate those persons. Those people.
That's interesting, because that's never talked about here. We never talk about, oh, this guy had a psychotic break because of cannabis. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard those words come out of anybody's mouth. So that's interesting that you're bringing that up. Like, what kind of things are you seeing as a result of cannabis consumption?
Well, what we are seeing, and not only in Portugal, but across Europe for sure, that can be accessed in the latest drug report of the European Monitoring Center for Drugs and Drug Addictions. And you see that the potency of cannabis in the market, in the black market, is increasing day by day. So that the amount of delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, as normally known, is increasing by the day. And that's quite dangerous, because you do not know what type of effects you will get from using a certain amount of cannabis. Because what you use today might be different from what you are going to use tomorrow. You never know. Yeah,
that's correct. So what if somebody, like I said, I was saying before, if somebody is getting caught again and again and again, and it's becoming obvious that this is problematic use for this person, and they won't stop, and I mean, they go in front of a tribunal or something to that effect. Is that correct?
Yes, they again, the key here is that the authorities will try to onboard that person on a rehabilitation program.
Right.
And the good news is that it's all supported by governmental funds.
Okay. Now, what if they don't want it? What if they, after all of this, and they're like, no, I won't do that? What happens then?
We cannot force the person. That's ultimately it is his choice to do it. But again, it's all about trying to raise awareness, give the tools to get rid of the addiction. Mm-hmm. We are not always successful, unfortunately. The success rate it's not 100%, but it's high.
And what do some of these treatment options look like if they choose to take that route?
Well, it always depends on the addiction they have. For example, giving the example of heroin, which is the most known example here in Portugal, they have access to free methadone, mm-hmm. which is like heroin, is also an opioid. It has the same effect as heroin, but with a much lighter withdrawal. So they do not feel the same effect as when they are without their daily dose of heroin.
Yeah. Well, it takes longer. It's a longer acting substance. Because I was on methadone for almost 2 years, and you can't, like, I could miss a dose, but if I missed too many doses, the withdrawal effects were pretty intense. But it is a longer acting substance, and you don't really get the same effects.
You don't suffer as much as with heroin withdrawal. And the key here is that you start giving lower doses over the time until the person is completely free of the addiction.
Yeah. Well, that's again, the hope, anyways.
This with, and you do this with psychological treatment in parallel as well, to help the person overcome this disease, if you want to call it like this.
Yeah. So are you guys seeing a lot of substance use in the workplace?
They are there. They are there, not just here in Portugal, but across Europe.
Across the world. We got it here too.
Yeah. Again, one of the issues we have in Europe, and as you are aware, Portugal is one of the member states of the European Union, and we have a lot of European level laws and regulations, but unfortunately when it comes to the workplace, there is no unified or harmonized law. So each country have their own laws, if they have. In Portugal, I can tell you it's poorly regulated. It is possible to do it. Normally, the biggest companies do it, like the oil refineries. So the bigger companies have the financial power to do it. Unfortunately, in Portugal, the large majority of the companies are family-owned, and sometimes they don't see this type of investment as an investment, but rather as a cost. So they fail to see the big picture. They just see, okay, I have to pay to test these people. That's an extra cost. It will decrease my profits at the end of the year, so it's a no-go for me. But again, they fail to see the advantages of these programs. And there is a very interesting study published by a Portuguese colleague. It's a retrospective study, a 10-year study of the Portuguese rail company, where analyzing the case of accidents, absenteeism, he realizes that for each euro or dollar that you invest in a program like this, a drug and alcohol testing program, screening program in the workplace, you will save in the future at least 15 times that amount, which is quite considerable. So that's why it should be seen as an investment and not as a cost. Additionally, and this is one of the biggest battles we see even at the level of European Workplace Drug Testing Society in terms of best practices, this type of programs, the goal is to increase the safety of the workplace and of the workers. It's not a tool to punish and to pursue employees. And this is very important to have this in mind. Unfortunately, not every time this is the case.
Yeah. So would you say that that is the biggest challenge as far as getting services to workers?
Yes, it's always a challenge. So in the process, and I was commercially involved in this process as the provider of this type of services to companies, to private companies. The first challenge you have is to convince the administration that this is actually something quite good for the company, because they will have a safer and healthier workplace and workforce. Okay. This is the first challenge. The second challenge will be the unions. Normally, they will see this as a menace. Again, they are worried, and unfortunately, this sometimes happens, that this will be a tool to punish the employees and to pursue them and to fire them. Once you can overcome those issues, then both parties can see the advantages of this type of programs.
Yeah, you know, it's a little bit similar here. You know, it's sort of seen as an inconvenience to some, you know, and they're afraid they're going to lose half their workforce if they start drug testing. Well, we won't have any workers left. So,
but again, this is also a very interesting topic, because if you don't look, you don't find.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
If you don't look, you don't find. You can assume that, no, I have no drug-related problems here in my workplace.
Yeah.
But are you testing?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, like I was a tradesman for a long time, and you know, I was using a lot, and yeah. I would have been terrified of drug tests back then. If my employer would have been like, here you go, and like pass me the cup, like that would have been terrifying to me, but a necessary thing, you know, like maybe that would have turned me around a lot sooner than I ended up, you know, seeing the light. You never know, right? So
there you go. This type of program is one of the goals is to be used as a deterrent agent. So that the person do not step in under the influence of any type of substance in the workplace, because again, they will be afraid of losing their income.
Yeah. You know,
quite logical.
I've said it a lot of times. The best thing that ever happened to me was a really bad day. You know, that got that slap from reality. Yeah, it wasn't a good day. Looking back now, it's one of my greatest assets. Like, it saved my life. But in the moment, boy, I would have done anything to avoid it. So, so what are some of the biggest issues that Portugal as a country is still facing, even with the decriminalization in place?
Right now is cannabis.
Really? So when someone starts talking about, oh well, they did it in Canada, are you guys like, oh?
Yes,
damn it, Canada.
I mean, it depends on how you see it. And funny enough, or ironically, we have Canadian companies here, not only, but for example, Tilray is here in Portugal, growing cannabis for medical purposes.
For Canadians? Or for Portuguese?
Yes. No, for Canadians.
Okay.
Just recently, our medicines agency approved the usage of THC and cannabidiol in pharmaceutical formulations.
For use in Portugal?
Yes. This is something that happened 1 year, 2 years top.
And how's that been going? Because I know when we brought it in, like when we legalized, it's causing problems, especially in the workplace where people are like, oh well, it's legal now, I should be able to smoke it, right? So they're doing that, and then they're getting in trouble, and they're pissing hot for THC, and they're having to go to treatment and education, and it's expensive for the employers too, right? So you know, yeah.
But again, the answer to that, and I had several discussions with American colleagues about it, because as you mentioned, in the majority of the American states, it's legal to use it for medical purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, should we test someone that is using medical cannabis in the workplace? And the answer is yes, for sure. For example, here in Portugal, we have substances like hypnotics, like benzodiazepines, oxazepam, diazepam, that is medically prescribed. You cannot access it without a medical prescription. Again, in the package insert, it always states that if you are operating heavy machinery, for example, or driving, you should not do it if you are taking that medication, because it will affect your performance and can endanger you and others. So it's the same thing.
Well, yeah, and that's the argument that I say that I use when talking about, you know, fit for duty and reasonable suspicion processes, is that the legality of the substance has nothing to do with its impairing effects. Like if you're impaired, it doesn't matter. I mean, if bananas impair you and you eat a banana and go to work, you know, like that's
exactly.
on. You know what I mean? So. But that has been a challenge for us is hammering that home, because when the floodgates opened, you know, everybody kind of thought it was fair game.
And again, here in Portugal, there are the discussions frequently in between employers and employees, which is about privacy.
Yeah.
For example, if I'm using cannabis, I want to go home and smoke a joint. And the right stance here from the employer to say, I don't care what you do in your private life. What I do care is that when you step into the workplace, that you are fit for duty. You are not under the influence, neither of alcohol or any type of substances. And here I'm including not only illegal substances like cannabis, heroin, cocaine, amphetamine, and so on, but also medical ones like tricyclic antidepressants like benzodiazepines, for example.
Yeah. The painkillers. You got a back injury, and you know you're on oxy, and you know you're not frothing at the mouth, but you're impaired. You know, what are you gonna do?
You are impaired, and you also know, and the US is a very good example of that. That what you go where you go next after oxycodone, oxymorphone. Fentanyl, probably, if you don't get access to that, you will end up in heroin anyway, to overcome that addiction.
So are there people pushing to legalize marijuana in Portugal?
Yes, several, not only some political parties, but also several civil movements are pushing towards it. Again, as an expert, I don't feel that there is a right answer.
Yeah.
Like everything has pros and cons.
Yeah.
Again, I think it should be well regulated.
Right.
You should be careful when regulating it.
So, but to be clear, though, it is not criminalized right now. It is the same as any other substance, right? But they want to be able to legally sell it and regulate it. That's what they're pushing for.
Exactly. So they want to a little bit like we have in the US, like in Canada, they want to go into the store and buy cannabis for recreational use because they want to smoke a joint, for example.
Yeah. Well, is there any, I think that's all I got for you, man, unless there's something else you want to touch on.
No, I would just add that on this topic, that as a pro, you have the fact that you can control the potency of cannabis and you can regulate it and control it. So probably you will decrease the cases of psychotic outbreaks, for example. Again, on the dark side of it, you need to be careful that no minor has access to it or any underage has access to it, and especially be very, very careful with the edibles. There is a very recent case in the UK where gummy bears containing THC were being sold, and several children were admitted into hospital with acute intoxications. So those are some of the points we should be careful if we want to go down the route of legalization of recreational use.
So I scrolled down here and I actually do have a couple more things. So
okay.
So are there any words of wisdom that you would have for our Canadian leaders should they move towards decriminalization? What are some first proactive steps that they can take to start this movement?
Again, I think Portugal can be seen as a very good example, with stressing that it worked with the Portuguese social tissue and with Portuguese culture and demographics. It doesn't mean that it will work with the Canadian society, for example, especially because your consumption profile is different from the Portuguese one in the 90s, for example. But again, I think decriminalization is a step forward, and again, you stop seeing the user as a criminal, but rather as a patient that needs medical attention. And I think that's the key step.
Okay. So was decriminalization worth it?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Again, I think all the countries in the world lost the battle against drugs long ago.
Yeah.
Before modern society even. If you look into history, you can find addiction of substances like ayahuasca in Brazil and Peru, like hashish in India, ancient India. So drugs are there. They are around for a long time. So we lost that battle already, but we can minimize its effects in society.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming, Jose. It was great talking to you.
Thank you for the invitation. It was
Yeah.
a pleasure.
Okay. Take care, my friend.
Take care. Have a good one.
Okay. Fostering change is our primary purpose here at Hard Knox Talks. If you would like to contribute to ending the stigma around emotional pain, please subscribe to our channel. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Like and comment your thoughts on our posts. Let us come together with our lived and living experience as a resource that has the power to engage new thought processes, to promote new ideas, to broaden the spectrum of care, to show the world that the lie is dead, we do recover, and we can show you how.
Thank you.